Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going deep inside a really well-documented near-death experience. But this one's different. It wasn't triggered by clinical death in the usual sense. It was sparked by a truly aggressive, terrifying disease.
That's right. We're looking at the experience of Dan R. from 1991, NDE 9734.
Yeah, and the sources give us this incredibly detailed picture. A man literally ripped from his body by physical trauma, leading to this profound encounter. But what drove him back? A really powerful, basic need to get home to his family.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Is an NDE always spiritual, or can it be, well, almost a biological response to extreme crisis?
Exactly. And understanding the physical starting point here is just, it's essential.
Absolutely. So Dan R. contracted dengue fever, which is bad enough. But this wasn't just one strain. It was 3 strains hitting him simultaneously, types 1, 3, and 4.
3 at once, wow.
Yeah, it's rare and it's devastating. By the time he got to a hospital in Lane, Georgia, it wasn't just dengue anymore. It had escalated into meningoencephalitis.
Okay, break that down for us. Meningoencephalitis.
It's severe inflammation of the membranes around the brain and the brain tissue itself. We're talking life-threatening stuff. Puts the pain, the whole experience, into a really grim context.
It certainly does. So let's unpack that physical reality, the buildup. I mean, dengue's nickname is breakbone fever for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. The pain was excruciating.
He actually described it as feeling like his brain was literally on fire.
And think about the other symptoms. Chattering teeth so bad he couldn't speak.
Which lines up perfectly with the hospital record, right?
Yeah.
It noted him being in acute distress.
Precisely. But the physical pain was maybe only half of it. The fever also triggered these terrifying delusions.
He thought he was being tortured. He was apparently screaming things like, "I don't know what you want," just pure confusion and terror.
And the sources paint such a vivid, horrible picture of these delusions. He was utterly convinced someone was taking a hammer, like actually breaking the bones in one hand.
Oh, man.
And at the same time, he believed someone else was peeling the skin off the back of his other hand. Systematically.
Just awful. His reality had completely fractured into agony.
It had. But here's the really striking part, the contrast between that internal horror and, well, the actual reality.
This is the bit that really gets me. What was actually happening?
He found out later. The hammering. It was a nurse gently tapping his hand, trying to find a vein for an IV.
Just a tap.
Just a tap. And the skin peeling. That was another nurse. Simply stroking the back of his other hand, trying to offer some comfort.
Wow. So his brain, under assault from this triple dengue, the meningoencephalitis, it translated comfort, basic medical care, into malicious torture.
It shows the sheer scale of the physiological breakdown, the delirium.
Staggering. And it was that peak physical distress, that pain, that finally tipped him over.
Exactly. The NDE seems to have started at the precise moment of a really invasive procedure, the spinal tap. They rolled him over, the doctor inserted the needle, and Dan explicitly said the pain sent him over the edge.
That was it. The boundary crossed.
That seems to be the trigger point, yeah. The physical trauma threshold that pushed him out of one reality and into the next.
So he goes over the edge. What happens immediately after? That ejection from the body.
It sounds like a classic out-of-body experience, or OBE. He describes suddenly being up in the corner of the ceiling, looking down, watching the doctor, the team, his own body, seeing them draw the fluid from his spine.
And it was fast, right? Not a slow drift.
Very fast. He said the instant the doctor pulled the needle out, he shot back into his body and out the other side.
Out the other side, initiating that floating phase.
Correct. And he stresses his perception during this observation part. He felt he clearly left his body, existed outside it, but maintained, and this is his description, normal consciousness and alertness.
Okay, but wait. Given the fever, the meningoencephalitis, how can we square normal consciousness with a brain that was, demonstrably failing just moments before?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If comfort felt like torture, how reliable is this reported clarity outside the body?
It's a paradox.
It is. The accounts suggest, though, that perhaps removing consciousness from the site of the physical pain and fever allowed that clarity to return. Because as soon as he started floating away, the pain stopped. Instantly. He found himself in this profound blackness.
Blackness, not light.
No light, initially. And this environment, this void, he described it as very peaceful, very calming, and very quiet.
A complete contrast to the agony just moments before.
Total contrast. And he notes that time just lost all meaning. The trauma was gone, replaced by this quiet, peaceful observation.
This is where his story really diverges from, let's say, the popular image of an NDE. No bright white light, No tunnel, at least not clearly in the darkness, and crucially, no beings, no angels, no guides.
None reported. Just blackness, peace, and quiet. Except for one single sound.
Right, the voice. Tell us about that.
It was just one auditory event, a disembodied voice. It didn't command him, didn't judge him. It simply stated a fact.
Which was,
You understand you were dying now.
wow, just a statement? No identity given to the voice.
No identity assigned then or later. Just that calm statement of fact and the immense quiet darkness.
And his reaction wasn't sort of spiritual surrender, it was something else.
Very much something else. He immediately felt he had a choice. Keep floating into this peaceful void or go back.
Go back to the pain, the fever, the suffering body. Why?
His motivation was incredibly grounded, almost practical. It was about his family.
His wife, Susan, and his daughters.
Exactly. They were apparently still waiting down at the border in Texas, and his thought process was, it didn't feel right to me to die without them being there.
So it wasn't a divine pull or a mission. It was love, responsibility, obligation to his family on Earth.
It seems so. A profoundly human, rational decision made in an utterly non-rational state.
And that grounded choice influenced how he came back. It wasn't just snapping back into his body.
No, the return was described as a process, almost methodical. The floating sensation stopped, and then he began to descend back, but a level at a time in the darkness, like he was pausing, resting at each stage on the way down.
Interesting, like descending through layers.
That's the feeling, yes. Almost like climbing down an invisible ladder in the void.
And did sensory input return gradually with these levels?
It seems so. At the higher levels, still in darkness, he started hearing faint, distant voices. Then, as he descended further, he could begin to make out light.
And then finally,
Full consciousness returned. Back in the hospital room, back in the midst of the medical crisis, the fever, the pain, the whole ordeal.
and the state he was in immediately after returning. It just proves how severe the physical damage still was. The staff asked him those standard orientation questions, right? Name, place, president.
Yes, and he knew the answers. He could think them, but he couldn't physically speak. He couldn't make his mouth form the words. That really highlights the brain injury from the meningoencephalitis, the fevers.
Yeah, the connection between thought and speech was broken, and the physical fight wasn't over.
Not by a long shot. He describes massive sweating from the fever afterward. So intense they had to change his bedding multiple times a day for a whole week.
A whole week of that. And he mentions the brain injury itself took years to fully process, to communicate properly about.
Yes, but the NDE itself, that experience, it had already set the stage for a really profound philosophical change.
This is maybe the most unique part of his story, the long-term impacts.
It really is, because when we look at NDE accounts generally, you often see people becoming more religious, often adopting a specific structured faith, maybe Christian usually.
Right, finding answers, seeing God, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But for Dan R., he says it was just the opposite.
The opposite. How so?
Well, he was apparently Protestant before this happened. Now he's unaffiliated with any religion. The NDE didn't give him answers to the big questions. Instead, it seems to have taught him that he didn't need those answers.
So, less certainty, not more.
Precisely. He describes himself now as content to let the mystery be. He actively resists putting labels on things. He never tried to identify the voice he heard, never tried to define the void.
He embraced the not knowing.
Yes. He stripped away the dogma. And that specific shift, moving away from the need for universal answers towards accepting mystery, that's remarkably uncommon in these accounts.
And such a profound internal shift must have rippled outwards into his life.
Oh, massively. His career path completely changed. He had a degree in geology, he was teaching appropriate technology, very practical, earthbound work.
Good stuff.
Very. And after the NDE, he became an artist and a writer.
A huge change. That must have affected relationships, too.
He mentions it did, understandably. Friends, family. This kind of fundamental recalibration of who you are, what your purpose is, it changes everything.
And he even tried to capture the experience visually.
Yes, he painted pictures based on his NDE, and apparently they have this unusual quality. They appear 3D when you look at them with special glasses, trying to convey that otherworldly geometry, perhaps.
Fascinating. And the memory itself, did it fade over time like normal memories?
He says absolutely not. 32 years later, the intensity, the clarity of the NDE memory hasn't faded at all. In fact, he claims he remembers the NDE more accurately than other, more mundane life events from that same period in 1991.
It's burned into his mind. essentially.
Seems like it. And it left other lasting effects, too, some quite unsettling phenomena.
Like what?
His dream life changed. Nights filled with what he called mystical, primal, otherworldly dreams. But maybe more disturbing was a physical sensation he developed afterward, a feeling of losing the sense of being contained within his own body.
What do you mean, like floating again?
Sort of. He described having to physically hold onto the bed frame sometimes to anchor himself. He feared he was falling through the bed or just floating off into the darkness again, like during the NDE.
Wow, that sense of physical boundary just blurred for him.
It seems the experience fundamentally altered his perception of physical reality itself.
So let's try and pull this together. Dan R's deep dive. It's this unique story. Extreme physical trauma, not clinical death, triggers an NDE. But it's an NDE defined by blackness, by quiet peace, not light in tunnels.
Right, and the return isn't driven by spiritual imperative, but by a very rational human love for his family.
Which then leads to this incredible philosophical turnaround, not towards answers, but towards embracing mystery, finding a new life purpose in art, in writing.
All stemming from a fever that almost killed him, not from his heart stopping.
Which brings us to the final thought, the question Dan R himself seems to pose.
Yes. He theorizes that his experience, triggered by that intense physical crisis, wasn't necessarily spiritual in the traditional sense. He thinks maybe his brain opened a door into his subconscious, into the realm of primal experience.
Door to the primal subconscious.
Exactly. So the really provocative question this leaves us with is, what does it mean if extreme physical failure like dengue-induced meningoencephalitis doesn't unlock heaven or hell, but instead opens a door to something deep within us? A primal, core human experience that completely shifts how you see knowledge, mystery, and your place in the universe.
Could trauma be a key, not just to suffering, but to accessing a different kind of consciousness, one rooted in our deepest, pre-rational selves?
That connection between the breaking point of the body and the potential unlocking of the primal mind. That's definitely something to think about.
Thank you for listening to Borrowed Time NDE Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss a moment of inspiration. Until next time, wishing you an extraordinary and truly wonderful time on your journey through life.